in the East and Horn Africa region. So these are our panelists. They're seated right here. You get to know them more as they present. Right, so we're going to start off our presentation, our discussion with a presentation from Dr. Dulani. Dr. Dulani, could you please come forward? We are giving, our panelists are going to take each 8 minutes to give us the opening remarks. So we'll start off with the presentation from Afrobarometer. Thank you.
Get the mic. Thanks. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I will be giving a presentation of our dispatch number 761, as the Chair has already introduced us. It was shared, I think, with the participants, so I'm not going to go through each and every detail that is contained in the dispatch, especially in the interest of time. I should just preface my presentation by pointing out that we recently completed our 10th round of surveys a few months back. So in the next couple of months, we will be sharing results from this most recent round of surveys, complementing or supplementing what we had in round 9. Who's moving the slides? Okay, so just to give, I think, just a brief overview of who we are as Afrobarometer, as the Chair has pointed out, for the benefit of those who are not as familiar with Afrobarometer, we are a network of non-partisan researchers operating in more than 40 countries on the African continent. It remains our goal to cover the entirety of the African continent. The goal for Afrobarometer is to give ordinary African citizens a voice in the policy making space. There's still, this is a map of of Africa, highlighting the countries where we are operating. There's still quite a number of countries, including the DRC, the Central African Republic, Libya, among others, where we do hope, I think, at some point to operate. But again, because of time, I want to move, I think, to just give some highlights, I think, from our report, dispatch number 761. If we could move to the next slide, please, colleagues. Okay, so as you can see, I think, giving just highlights on elections and multi-party competition on the continent, we see that more than 3 in 4 citizens on the continent expressed support for open and honest elections as the best way of choosing elected and choosing political leaders. And out of this number, about half actually strongly support the use of elections as a means for selecting leaders. 60% or slightly more also support elections. There are still a couple of countries. Can we move to the next slide, please? I do apologize for that. But there are also a few countries where there are, like Lesotho, where some citizens opt for other ways of choosing leaders, although they don't define what those methods are. Rather worrisomely, and I know that there's another panel ongoing at the moment focusing on the youth are less attached to using elections as a means for selecting leaders. And I think on a continent that is predominantly young and youthful, this remains, I think, quite a major concern. But overall, when we look at this and try to look at the trends over time, we see that the support for elections has held steady and robust as a means for electing leaders. And I think this is important because we do know that there are those that would argue that some of these institutions are kind of alien to the African continent. And also we see quite a lot of strong support for multi-party competition. So there's a strong public support for having multiple political parties take part in the political process. I do apologize, it seems like we are stuck with this map of the continent for a while. But while I think my colleagues really try and sort out this, I just want also just to highlight in terms of support for elections. Of course, as a continent, we do see quite a lot of variation. As I said, Lesotho, the Basotho are among the least supportive of elections, with just barely 44% of Basotho saying that they look at elections as the best means of electing leaders. On the other extreme, on the other top end, Liberians are among the most vocal supporters. Thank you so much. So Liberians, Sierra Leoneans, and the Beninois citizens are among the strongest supporters of using elections as a means for choosing political leaders. Good Lord, we seem to be going backwards. Can we go forward, please? Now, I think maybe of particular interest is to break down the support for elections as a means of electing leaders by different demographic characteristics. We don't see a huge difference between men and women. Not a huge difference, actually, but not difference at all between rural and urban residents in terms of their support for elections. But I think where we see some significant differences in the age categories. Of course, among the youngest citizens on the continent, support is still quite high at 73%, but that is relatively lower compared to citizens that are aged over 55. So where 78, almost 1 in 8 in 10 say that they support the use of elections for choosing political leaders. There are also some differences by region, with East Africans being among those most supportive of using elections as a means of selecting leaders. And as I already said, if we move to the next slide, there is also strong support for multi-party competition across the continent, with nearly, again, 2/3 saying they support multi-party competition. Colleagues, if we can move faster, because we don't have as much time. Anyway, moving on, I think, can we go to the next slide, please? So in terms of integrity of elections, just in summary, there is a strong and overwhelming support, strong and overwhelming belief that the previous elections were either completely free or partly free, with about 20% saying they were partly free and 65% saying they were completely free. So there is a sense that the quality of elections has been increasing, and also that there is a strong belief that most citizens feel that they have freedom to choose who to vote, who should lead them. And we see this highest in Gambia and indeed in our host country, Zambia, but much smaller numbers feeling that they are completely free to choose who to vote for in countries like Ethiopia, Eswatini, and Gabon, among others. Interestingly, I think the Tanzanians, but I think, Tanzanians feel that the previous elections for them were the most, they had the highest integrity levels, but this is the previous elections, not the latest ones. So it'll be interesting to see if there will be changes, I think, in our next round of surveys. Again, we'll skip, I think, the rest of that slide, and if we move to the next slide, please. So just to present, I think, this is the freedom, the extent to which citizens feel free to vote without the pressure. You see that about 2/3 say that they are completely free to vote, and as I said, about another 1/5 saying they are at least somewhat free. So there is a sense that there is increasing, I think, freedom to vote. But looking at the trends over time, we see that there's been a slight decline in the proportion of citizens on the continent that feel that the most recent elections were generally free and fair. And this has fallen from 64% in 2014 to just about 58% if we move to the next slide in 2022-2023. So over this 10-year period, there's a decline. The perceptions that the quality of elections is declining, whilst the proportion of those that feel the most recent elections were not free and fair, I think that has grown to about 1/3 of the citizens. And of course, if we see, look at the continental picture, we see that among Gabonese citizens, just about 14% feel that their most recent elections were free and fair, whereas on the other extreme, we have Tanzanians where about 8 in 10 felt that their last elections were free and fair. So huge variation, but again, you see that I think on average, the general sense is that the quality trust in the Electoral Commission, rather, to apologize, has, is lagging behind at just around 1/3. So majority, I guess on average, feel that they have less trust in the Electoral Commission. And interestingly, when we look at the trends over time, we'll see that if we move to the next slide, please, we actually see that if you look at the green bar, initially that's the proportion of citizens that expressed trust in the Electoral Commission. Way back in 2013, 2014, the numbers of those who expressed trust in the Electoral Commission was higher than those who didn't have trust. But by 2016, 2018, we see a reversal in the graphs. So you see now more people saying they have no low trust levels in the Electoral Commission. So this is really an area that does require quite a lot of attention. So in concluding, elections, I think, do remain the most preferred method for choosing leaders, with a few exceptions, as I said, countries like Lesotho. But overall, Africans really want elections to use them as a means to choosing leaders. Support for multi-party competition is generally strong, although it has weakened somewhat over time, and that most citizens do value their freedom to vote, but there are still concerns about declining electoral integrity, and as already pointed out, reduced and lowering levels of trust in the election management bodies. So these declines, I think, do present a challenge, but also I think knowing and being familiar with them does pose, I think, an opportunity that we can know what areas I think we need to improve in terms of improving the quality of our elections. I guess I've kind of abused my time. I do apologize, Chair, but as I said, I do trust that people had a chance to go through the dispatch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for presenting to us the actual picture of what things are in our continent. One thing that I picked up is that citizens across Africa, they still believe that the only way we can change, governments is when we go for elections. I think that gives us hope. The problem, though, that we have is that they do not trust the election management bodies, that level of trust. And what's